The Chicago White Sox have a pivotal draft coming up on Sunday. Let's get a preview of what the Sox might do with their top picks in this year's draft with my guests next on Locked On White Sox.
You are Locked On White Sox, your daily Chicago White Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And hello, I'm your host, Todd Welter, a lifelong Sox fan and the site expert of Southside Showdown, part of the Fansided Network. You can check out my written content at SouthsideShowdown.com, and also I've covered Major League Baseball for outlets such as the Associated Press. And thanks for making Locked On White Sox your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox, and also follow or subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. And this episode of Locked On White Sox is brought to you by Booking.com. Booking.yeah. The right stay can make you a fan of any city, even your rivals. Check out Booking.com for your stay today. Well, the new lottery rules means the Sox will not have a top 9 pick in next year's draft, despite being so bad this season. Last year's unexpected 101 losses has yielded the Sox the number 5 pick in this year's draft. And this is also a draft where the Sox have 4 picks in the draft's first 80 selections. And if they get some of these prospects to sign under the slot, they could potentially cash in on getting some more good young players in maybe rounds 4, 5, and 6, much like how they got George Wolcott. No matter what happens, though, the Sox need to walk away with as many as possible prospects in the first 5 rounds to help be the foundation of the next good White Sox team that will likely be competitive as soon as maybe 2026. But probably 2027 or 2028 are more likely. And to get you ready for such a pivotal draft, I had Ian Eskridge from FutureSox on yesterday to take inventory of what the Sox already have in their system. Well, today, FutureSox podcast co-host and managing editor James Fox now joins me to preview the actual draft. And James, you got a 5-round mock draft on FutureSox.net out. So why are the Sox taking a prep shortstop/outfielder?
Well, I think there's a couple reasons. Good to be with you, Todd, again. Thanks. Todd, geez, if they took you, I think that'd be a big problem.
Yeah. I got a small strike zone.
Yeah, there's that. No, I think Connor Griffin's really good. I think they think he's really good, but I don't know if you heard any of the Mike Shirley audio. That's not the only reason. I think he's also probably going to take the least amount of money out of anybody else that they can take. And look, I think people hear that and they're like, oh, the White Sox are going cheap. But, something you mentioned, they have 4 of the top 78 picks in this draft, 5 of the top 107. They got $15.3 million to spend on their entire class. We kind of talked about this last time. The slot is 7 million or 7.7 million, I guess is the easiest way to explain it. If you pay him 6.7 or even 7 and save $700K for later, it's going to help you at 43 in these other spots. So I don't know that it's going to be Connor Griffin. If you made me guess, that's who I would get. That's who I would pick. Now, the thing that's interesting is just, if one of those pitchers goes top 3, that's going to leave one of the 4 college bats for the White Sox at 5. The thing that I can't really figure out that I don't know, like how many of those college bats would they just automatically take if they're on the board at 5? I think Weatherholt is the only one who you might be able to cut some more money with, similar to Griffin. But I mean, if Bazana or Condon fell to you at 5, my thought is that they would just take him and pay him the full 7.7. Probably similar with Caglione. But I just, as we get closer, I feel like all 4 of those guys are going to be gone and the pitchers are going to be on the board. But who knows? Like, this is very, very dependent on what happens in front of them. And I don't think Mike Shirley was lying this week when he said, like, hey, we don't know what's going to happen in front of us. So, we don't really know. He said they're looking at 10 players at 5, which makes sense because that top group is 10 guys.
Yeah. And the other thing is that's what most all you do is pick up Moneyball. That's what they talked about. You find 10 guys and you hope one of them signs at probably the lowest price possible. But if it is Griffin and Caglione on the board, do you think Chris Getz and Mike Shirley go with Caglione? Because they have spoken highly about him.
Yeah, so maybe. I mean, I've heard from some people that, that they would just take Cags. I think it depends on how much they want to work back to front. Like if you come into Sunday really committed to like, some prep pitcher that you love at 43 and like another guy at 68 and Cags or somebody else could potentially like stop you from doing that. Like maybe you just execute your potential plan. And look, I don't know that this is their plan, but these are all scenarios, right? Like if it's Connor Griffin, you're probably going to have extra money to spend. If it's the other guys, you're not, for the most part. So, but look, I mean, you might just say, we're picking 5 this year. We can't pick till 10 next year. We have to take the best guy possible. So, I think most fans would just prefer to take the best guy, but the baseball draft's a little bit different where you have to kind of spread your money around and get the most talent possible.
Well, and also isn't taking a first baseman in the first round almost like the equivalent of like taking a running back in the NFL draft in these days?
Yeah, I mean, it's not great, but I mean, the one thing is you can't create a draft, right? So, I mean, I had a lot of questions about my 5-round mock that you referenced because I put a lot of pitching in it, and the White Sox pitching, it's a real area of strength, right? But you can't create a draft class. You can't just take hitters at 43 and 68 if those players don't exist. Like if, I think this is something I kind of talked about with you last time, if I recall, like the prep pitching class is really deep, and like high school pitching is frightening, for a lot of teams. They don't like taking it. It's a high bust rate. Now, I think the majority of pitchers on your top 100 list right now came from the high school ranks, but a lot of them do bust and don't do anything. So I understand that. But if that's where the best players are, that's kind of what you have to do instead of just like trying to fill a need, like trying to fill your farm system with hitters. So yeah, I mean, that's why this is, and Keith Law has repeated it a couple of times. I saw it in print today, and I saw him, on a show somewhere, just talking about how bad this draft class is. I mean, it's a really bad draft class. The top is fine. Like they're going to get a good player, but it's just not a good deep class. And part of the reason for that is there's not that many prep players. There's no shortstops. It's a lot of college bat first types that don't play premium positions. Like it's first baseman. It's a lot of corner outfield profiles. It's some third baseman, but there's not a ton of up the middle players, and the high school position player class is not great.
All right. So you and I had a conversation on X, formerly Twitter, about the Sox possibly taking a pitcher and say Chase Burns. If he is there, or Higgins Smith, are they going to be in play there? Or is it, as you said, you can't just create a hitter?
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think they're going to take a pitcher. Now, have you heard Shirley's quotes at all? Like some people message me on Twitter like, hey, he mentioned the college pitcher specifically, and he did. Look, he's not going to come out there on a Tuesday and say like, oh yeah, we definitely want a hitter. Like we're not taking one of the pitchers, because if you are negotiating right now, which they are with all these guys, every team is talking to agents trying to see like the minimum they'd sign for, those sorts of things. It's part of the baseball draft. Like if you're going to maybe take JJ Weatherholt at 5 or take Connor Griffin at 5, you need to have that leverage in your back pocket. Like, oh, well, we could just take Chase Burns, or we could just take Higgins Smith. So, hey, why don't you sign here for $6.75 million because you're not going until 10 anyway, that sort of thing. So anything he says publicly like that, look, I think they got 10 guys in their mix, right? But they pick at 5. So they're going to leave 5 of those guys on the board.
Yeah, I just hope they have a good process. That's just what I would like to see, and I think we have been seeing with Mike Shirley lately running the draft is they've got a pretty good process in place. So James is sticking around for a full show. I want to get back into his mock draft and discuss what the Sox might do with other very important picks that they have, because picking in the top basically 150. That's where you can build your baseball teams, folks. And I want to talk about what he might think they might do with pick 43, 68, and 78 next. Locked On White Sox. With Stitch Fix, you get a stylist who understands your style, size, and budget. They do all the shopping for you. It's the easiest way to update your wardrobe this season. And honestly, I really need to get hooked up by them, as my idea of a good wardrobe is a ball cap, hoodie, a t-shirt, and some cargo shorts. And while I feel comfortable, it's not exactly something my wife enjoys me wearing to, say, church or going out to dinner. My one pair of khakis and a button-up shirt is probably running its course on Sundays. And it sounds like Stitch Fix makes it also easily, especially since I don't like to shop, and they can save me that time and effort. Plus, it looks like the outfits that they can get you could make me look and feel really good. And here's what it is. Getting me ready to use Stitch Fix up to, to up my game. You just give your stylist your size, style, and budget preferences. You order boxes when you want and how you want. No subscription required. And they send you 5 just for you pieces, plus outfit recommendations and pro styling advice. Excuse me. You keep what works and send back the rest. Style that makes you feel as you look. Now's the best time to get started at stitchfix.com/MLB and get $100 off. That's $25 off your first 4 fixes for a limited time only. That is stitchfix.com/MLB for $100 off. Stitchfix.com/MLB must redeem within 7 days of sign up. Offer does not include kid fixes. Again, I'm still battling this cold, ladies and gentlemen. Here on Locked On White Sox, we pride ourselves on getting you the latest news for your team, whether it's the offseason, the draft, spring training, or the playoffs. It's year-round, and you know what else is year-round? Collection season. Just because tax season is over doesn't mean the IRS will stop coming after you for unfiled taxes. The IRS can garnish your wages, levy your bank accounts, and even seize your property. Don't let the IRS target you. Let the licensed professionals of tax experts at Tax Network USA go to bat for you. One of my first jobs, I worked for a bank in the collections department. And even I knew the IRS was not something I'm messing around with. Bank can threaten foreclosure. Excuse me again. If you get behind your bills, there's a lot of hoops they have to jump through sometimes just to be able to take that action. Not the IRS, because they're usually first in the line to get their money. So when they say they will do something, they can do it. With over 14 years of experience and an A+ rating by the Better Business Bureau, Tax Network USA has saved their clients over $1 billion in tax debt. Whether you owe taxes, have complicated matters that require tax planning, or finally hit that parlay of the season and need help correctly filing, call 1-800-549-1000. Visit tnusa.com/lockedon. Be sure to mention Locked On White Sox at checkout, and you'll receive a $250 discount of their services. And are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Excuse me again. Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today. A free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest sports stories without all that screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news. Again, sorry, this cold is just destroying me right now. Streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And the White Sox are off today, but the Pittsburgh Pirates come into town this weekend for a 3-game set. First pitch of Game 1 on Fridays at 7:10 p.m. Central. Catch every pitch of the White Sox hometown broadcast with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Search White Sox. Welcome back into Locked On White Sox. I'm your host, Todd Welter, and thank you for making the show your first listen. Lots of great White Sox podcasts out there, like FutureSox with James Fox. And James, what is the YouTube page that we can find your podcast at again?
It's just at FutureSox. Yeah. So we've started doing the whole video thing. Ian Eskridge, who your listeners know now, is the master with all the video content. So that's where you can find us. Like, subscribe, please.
I think he's watched more minor league baseball than anybody I've ever met in my life.
Oh, he loves it. Yeah,
I know.
Yeah.
So yeah, make sure you got FutureSox in your rotation. I just always ask, make me your first listen or your second. Either way, you get great content from the guys at FutureSox. James, so you got the Sox taking a prep pitcher with pick 43. Why might the Sox do it, and why is it smart to take a pitcher in that part of the draft?
Well, I don't know how smart it is. The class is really good, though. So I just thought it would be the best talent on the board, and also that wasn't just necessarily what I do, right? I'm trying to predict what they're actually going to do. I've heard a lot about them linked to guys from this prep class. So, I had Boston Bateman. He's a big lefty from California. I know you're going to get to 68, but that's the guy who I've heard them with more. Joey Oki of Ankeny Centennial High School in Iowa. He's a righty. He pitched on their area codes team. So Mike Shirley and their scouting staff is very familiar with him. So I had those two guys there. I mean, there's other prep pitchers in the class. There's a kid, Blake Larson, who was a Iowa high school standout who pitched at IMG Academy in Florida this year. I think there's some interest there. Levi Sterling is another prep righty out of California that I've heard some linkage to. So yeah, I mean, I just, Ryan Sloan is the local kid from York High School. He's a stud. But I mean, he's going to get a lot of money. I don't think they can get him down to their spot at 43, and they're not going to take him at 5. So while the White Sox were heavily represented at all of Sloan's starts, I just, I think he's going to go before that, probably, into the top 25 or so potentially. But if it's not until the 30s, he'll get paid like a top 20, top 25 type guy.
Now, can you explain area code team? Because I obviously know about it and all that, but our
Mhm.
audience might not know that, and how that actually can help teams find good baseball players.
Yeah, so it's just a high school tournament essentially. And the White Sox have a team. JJ Lally coaches it. He's longtime Midwest area scout, recently moved to cross checker. So he's the guy that's responsible for drafting Noah Schultz and George Wolko in this area. So yeah, I mean they get a lot of Midwest kids on their area code team, and then they usually go out and they play in California like in the summer. So he would have had these guys last year, like when they played, which is interesting. But the other thing, like 43 is really interesting, Todd, because I have two prep pitchers, right? But we could be sitting there on Sunday night. It's a really deep class of college hitters. Where like look, there's some guy that the White Sox would probably take 15th overall in this class, you know, that's supposed to go in the 20s, whatever, that could possibly fall to 43. And then they just like run the card in and do it, right? I just like don't have that name. That's why I'm really interested in just analyzing this class and not like trying to project it as my, I've been on all these shows and it's cool. Like I love doing it, but I kind of want to see who they have so then we can like talk about the players that they actually took instead of the players they might take.
Well, I actually like the direction you're taking them because again, it's more of just prepping. You get a group of guys on the board, and who's going to sign at the cheapest. That's really what it is. It's not really we're getting the best players available. We're getting a group of players that we think is the best player available, and then who's going to give us the sign, and then do we have money later to steal somebody? And you actually convinced me because remember I said one of the first times we talked was I'd be taking pitchers in 4 through 6, and you're like maybe you might want to take a pitcher sooner, and that's why I liked your mock where it's like yeah, well, a bat sounds always good to have a principle in your process in the first round, but maybe you should be taking a pitcher in the second to make sure you at least have a potential stud in your pocket, like how they got with Grant
Mhm.
Taylor
Right.
and well, I'm trying to remember
I
the
mean,
other.
they took Grant Taylor. Yeah, they took Grant Taylor in the second. They took Seth Keener in the third. I mean, Jonathan Cannon was a third round overslot. He's in the big leagues already.
Yeah,
So, like, my favorite draft strategy is prep position player in the first round, college pitching, early on day two. Because I think those guys are good. They're quick to the majors. And that's what I mean. Like, we get to 43 if it's a college pitcher. Nobody should be surprised. I didn't mock that this time, because I know there's some
mm,
guys further down the board that they like. But yeah, I mean, there could be somebody, and there's not. I don't have the Tommy John guy this year. They've done that the last 2 years. They've taken Peyton Pallette, and they've taken Grant Taylor, two guys that essentially missed their junior college seasons rehabbing from Tommy John surgery, and one of those was going really well with Grant Taylor. The other one, Peyton Pallette, he's kind of been a struggle. But a similar strategy. There's not a lot of injured pitchers this year. But if that's a college pitcher, I wouldn't be surprised at all.
yeah, Peyton. That was the name. I'm like I knew they took another guy in the second round with that, and that's why I kind of like that draft strategy. You already talked about Joe Yoki. Then, you got the Sox going with a college catcher with pick 78. Why is Cole Messina should be the pick, and why is it a good idea to always draft up the middle?
Yeah, so that's just a name that I know of a guy, that they had been linked to. There's a Colby Shelton, I think, is a shortstop from Florida. He's another college bat that I heard like in that range. The White Sox like drafting catchers. They've done it quite frequently in drafts. They did it last year, Calvin Harris of Ole Miss in the fourth. So, I think Cole Messina, he's got a little more bat than Calvin Harris, and he's not as great of a defender, but I think, he didn't play that much at Mississippi State. Because other guys got drafted, the past couple of years there. So I think that's a worthwhile stab at 78. And I think you'll have a bat in there somewhere. Like it could be, prep bat at 5, prep bat at 43, and then you're super college heavy because like it's really hard to go high school heavy throughout a whole draft just because those guys are expensive. So they will have to like take their fair share of college players at some point.
All right, well, let's wrap up the draft talk and discuss the two final picks James has in his mock draft and why the top 5 rounds are so darn important. Next, Locked On White Sox. All right, this episode of Locked On White Sox is brought to you by Booking.com. Booking.yeah. With summer travel heating up, especially travel for baseball games, it's time to explore those U.S. cities you always secretly wanted to learn more about. Yes, we're talking about your rival cities, and with hotels, bed and breakfasts, vacation rentals, resorts, and so much more on Booking.com, you might just find your perfect stay, even in your baseball rival city. I know you've been hearing me talk about all week, but after the All-Star break, the Sox are going to Kansas City. You want to head out, check out the Negro League Museum. My oldest sister, Mary, before she passed away, one of the last things she went to was Kansas City. She loved it there. You know, her kids loved baseball. She had a relation to Mike Moustakas, so it was really cool for her to get out there. She was always telling me, you got to get out to Kansas City, Todd. Get yourself some barbecue and check off visiting another rival stadium off your list. Use Booking.com to find a place to lay your head, from hotels that look over stadiums to a family-friendly resorts. Booking.com has so many choices across the U.S. for your summer travel this MLB season. The right stay can make you a fan of any U.S. city, even your rivals. Book today on Booking.com on the site or in the Booking.com app. And the Chicago White Sox might be terrible this season, but it is still professional baseball being played at Guaranteed Rate Field. Paul Skeens is not likely to pitch this weekend at Guaranteed Rate Field, but Garrett Crochet is slated to start on July 12th, and there might be only so many starts he makes for the Southsiders with all these trade rumors swirling. That's why if you want to take in a game where Garrett Crochet might be making one of his last few starts for the Sox, use the Game Time app. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch, with killer last-minute deals. All-in prices, views from your seat, and the lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. They got zone deals. Save even more when you choose a section and let Game Time choose the seats. Take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. And the White Sox are off today, but the Pittsburgh Pirates come into town this weekend for a 3-game set. First pitch of Game 1 on Friday is at 7:10 p.m. Central. Catch every pitch of the White Sox hometown broadcast with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Search White Sox. Welcome back into Locked On White Sox. I got friend of the show, third appearance. He's always willing to come on every now and again on that quid pro quo. James Fox from FutureSox, the managing editor and the co-host of FutureSox, that you can check out every Sunday, right? But the one that you host with Ian Eskridge was on the show yesterday. As I want to get everybody ready for the draft, because this is a very, I think, important draft. The Sox are terrible. They're not going to get a top 9 pick next year. They got a chance to get, as James has said throughout the episode, there is some very good talent at the top of the draft, so they will be able to get a cornerstone piece. So I want to make sure you guys are all ready. But it's not just pick one, that round one, that you build a team through. You can get guys in the second, third, and fourth and fifth round. So, James, you got the Sox taking a pitcher out of Indiana and another one out of LSU in rounds 4 or 5. Again, why are the Sox continuing maybe what you're thinking of adding to what's already a strength in their organization?
Yeah, I just think their pitching development right now is ahead of their hitting development. That's like one of the moves that I'd like to see them make in the offseason is getting a hitting equivalent Brian Bannister. I trust that guy. I think that's like one hire that Chris gets made that they've pretty much nailed. I mean, they got, and I'm sure Ian told you all about like all the minor league pitching that they have, but adding a couple more guys. And look, these college guys are a little bit risky. I mean, Connor Foley was a football player from Indiana. Mike Shirley loves Indiana players. That's where he's from. But I mean, Foley's interesting because he was out of the bullpen at Indiana for a while, but big physical kid, started this year, showed some potential to continue starting. But if he can't, that's, a super high leverage reliever. And I think in the fourth, that's fine. And then Thatcher Hurd out of LSU was terrible this year. He's on the Cape kind of rehabbing. He's not hurt, but he's rehabbing his stock a little bit. He was really highly touted coming out of high school in California. The Sox loved him. He decided to not take, money from the draft. And, it's one of these horror stories essentially now. But I mean, he went to UCLA. He was just okay. Transferred to LSU. Wasn't great his sophomore year, was even worse this year. And now, a guy that might have went in the top 50, like out of high school a couple of years ago, is going to be like a 4th or 5th round pick potentially. So, I think at that spot in the draft, it's worth the risk. Like if you're pitching people like him, there's real upside there, and you're buying low, like after a rough college season.
And what I like about Bannister, and I think 670 score had something about him, is he does like velocity, but he likes is the secondary pitches. Make sure you can throw your best pitches as many times as possible. So if these guys don't have a ton of velocity, if they can at least throw their secondary pitches well and throw them a lot, they're going to learn well from Brian Bannister. So I like how you brought that up. And I like how you broke down the slot money for each round. And the casual fan tends to focus on round 1, but with the money that can be slotted in rounds 2 through 5, why are those rounds almost as important as a first round pick?
Well, it just depends on how much money you can save. Like if you don't save anything in round 1, it's a little bit tough because then you're taking the slot from like maybe 8, 9, and 10 after you sign like a $10,000 player and you spend it like maybe round 2, round 3. The White Sox also have a $730,000 overage, so you can spend $5K or 5% over your draft pool. Which is what gets me to 15.3 million basically in their pool, like that overage. But that's not part of like all the, the picks if you have them like laid out essentially. So that's like an extra 700K. So essentially their pick at 43 is worth $2.2 million. I mean, you could come up with 800K somewhere and sign somebody for $3 million at that spot. $3 million is like the bonus pool in the mid 20s. So, like you might be able to take the 25th best player in the draft at 43 by paying them over $3 million. And what you do at that point is like, you basically just tell kids like, look, we're willing to pay you 3.2 or whatever. Tell everybody like you're not going to sign unless it's more than that. And that's how you float a guy down the board essentially.
All right. And is there a potential first round pick the Sox could steal? I remember AJ Brzezinski saying, we're not stealing first rounders lately in later rounds if they can get some team friendly bonus contracts.
I don't know about a first rounder just because like this class is rough. Like even Mike Shirley kind of said that he thinks there's like 12 to 15 really good players. And then after that, it's kind of jumbled. But no, I mean, you could get a guy at 43 or 68 that you like go to MLB pipeline after and you're like, oh, this guy was in the top 50, So yeah, I don't really know. Like last year, they kind of, like the George Wolko thing is rare. They take George Wolko out of their own backyard for $1 million as a 7th rounder. And I feel like a lot of people are like, oh, that's a 7th rounder. Like if George Wolko played high school baseball at Downers North this year and did what he's doing right now, he's probably a top 50 pick in this draft. So, that's significant. Is there somebody that they can do that with again? Maybe, but I don't have the name right now, obviously.
Yeah, and I mean, again, it's really hard to do. Like I was just bringing that up because I remember AJ Brzezinski was totally complaining about it. It was like, well, you got Wolcott, and those are just really hard to do unless you get like rock bottom, and then you find some guy at junior college that is overachieving and that you can convince to basically don't go to college. I mean, that's really what it is. Well, James, I appreciate your time, and that wraps up this edition of Locked On White Sox. But before I go, are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn on the volume with all that shouting. Make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest sports stories without all that screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV Channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And I'll be back tomorrow with Elijah Evans from Just Baseball and FutureSox to discuss how the Sox can improve their farm system through potential trades they will make at the deadline. Make sure to subscribe to the YouTube page at Locked On White Sox or follow or subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. And again, James, where can we find all your content?
Yeah, so I can be followed at Twitter at JamesFox917. If you don't already, I mentioned the YouTube page. Everything we do is like at FutureSox, basically. So you can go to FutureSox.com. It'll route you to FutureSox.net. It's the same thing. So that's where all of our written content is. I have 10 draft profiles up of the Shirley 10 that they had kind of talked about there. I have multiple mock drafts there too. So, we have a live stream Sunday night. So watch the draft with us, please.
All right. And feel free to leave comments about today's discussion with James Fox of FutureSox. And once again, thanks for being the prospect news rock stars you guys are in such a bleak time for the big league club. You can leave comments at the episode page. Again, sorry, guys, I'm just battling this cold. The episode page on YouTube, X, formerly Twitter at Todd J. Dub or at Locked On Sox. email me at lockedonwhitesox@gmail.com. Have a great day. See you tomorrow.